back. Scaling Ventures podcast. We are building a portfolio, niche vertical SaaS firms, little ones that punch like $50 million ARR giants. Yeehaw. Back here today to discuss with you the biometrics of business, why smart operators run on scorecards. Table of contents, why scorecards are wildly underrated, the anatomy of a good scorecard, from biometrics to bottlenecks. Then we'll dive into taxonomy, cadence, design principles, and we'll wrap with a real world example. So to kick off, I'm sure every one of you has read or been referred Measure What Matters. And there's so much that comes to mind here. A dear friend and colleague and mentor of mine used to say all the time that focus creates the space for performance. And so as an operator, as a business leader, one of the greatest points of leverage is to understand very, very quickly where the business is over and underperformant across the dimensions that matter the most. So as a function of that, it's usually like, all right, theory of constraints. We know that these are the weak links in the business as a function of benchmarks relative to our peers, as a function of our own base rates, et cetera. And so this kind of scorecard thing tells you, or is meant to emphasize, measuring the most important elements to unlock value creation in the business and being able to digest and comprehend that point of view very, very quickly. So the metaphor that I like to use a lot is like biomarkers, right? It's like you go to the doctor, they draw blood, they take urine, they come back to you and they say, hey, here's a full readout. Your cholesterol is a little high, your XYZ is a little low. This stuff is great. And then from there, it informs everything. So unfortunately in business, you can't draw blood, you can't take urine. You have to observe and lean in and harvest data. And so establishing that point of view is the hard part at the beginning, and then orienting the business around those metrics to associate effort with impact in the areas that matter the very, very most is job number 1, 2, and 3 of a CEO, if you ask me. So some mantras here. If you can't see it, you can't steer it. You can't improve, or you can't manage what you don't measure. There's about a million flavors of that same sentiment. And so when done right, a scorecard is meant to give you a split-second point of view across the things that matter the absolute most for the business at that exact specific point in time. It is cool as hell. So think about, you're in an F1 car that's hauling ass and you're holding on for dear life, but you've got this dashboard that tells you, okay, we've got a little bit more gas. This thing's running hot, et cetera, et cetera. I've probably killed you with metaphors by now. So let's then jump into kind of like why scorecards are wildly underrated. So another kind of sentiment or headline here is that a good scorecard is like a learning loop amplifier. And so it's intended to surface systemic issues before they hit the P&L, to anchor weekly execution around bottlenecks, and to focus leadership conversations on what's changing, not what's already obvious. And I think the thing here is a lot of times scorecards are kind of framed as like this hardcore, and you want them to drive insane accountability. As a lot of other sharp business people say, there's really two options. You either optimize organizational structure for communication or for accountability. I always index toward accountability. So the scorecard, you bet your butt, is absolutely an accountability instrument, but it's more so an understanding of across the entire organization. I'm executing on this because it impacts this outcome, which is attached to a big picture goal. So think of it more as an operational pulse and kind of a flashlight, and less of like a public shaming thing. If it's starting to do that, something's wrong. You're measuring the wrong thing. So anatomy of a good scorecard, there's a few components. So you have these evergreen metrics, which in a SaaS context are logo retention, ARR. These are things that are non-negotiable health indicators that are respective to your context, that are just, protect the core and they alert before the plane stalls is a good headline. But evergreen is meant to exist forever, right? These are kind of fundamental metrics that our entire category is measured by. You want to have an eye on those nonstop. Then you have outcome-based metrics, which are tied to this quarter and beyond's big strategic bets. So you put it very simply, we're building pipeline where it hurts. We want knowledge at the point of need. We want a reliable product. Those are outcomes. Kind of, you could think of them as objectives in like an OKR context. And there's a measurement instrument that tells you, are you delivering or moving the needle as it relates to that outcome? So those are meant to be generally pretty static. Like, you want to set strategy and not thrash or oscillate. You want strategy to be a mid to long-term thing, because your effort, the thing that compounds the most over time is effort. So you want to play long games that way, but things evolve. The business evolves. So as you achieve outcomes, and when we say achieve, it's usually achieve base rate kind of benchmark performance or then some, or start to see diminishing returns on your effort, you swap out those outcome-oriented metrics. So we've got evergreen stuff that never changes. We've got outcome stuff that's static at 90-day kind of minimum. And then you have critical 5, which are on a function-by-function basis. the 5 leading indicators that you are the most fixated on, which are meant to attack weak points in the chain or continue going hard at what you're seeing the greatest returns on effort. So basically just improving what is improving the fastest. And then another sentiment or concept here is just banding. So you want to wrap these around each of these metrics: evergreen, outcome, and the functional based critical 5, no more than 5 per function, which is a forcing function, you bet. And obviously you want no more than 5 outcomes that you're pursuing at any given time. And you'll note like a well-defined scorecard. Hormozy has a good one where if you look at a data point and it changes and it doesn't change behavior, then it has no business in a scorecard like this. So like Job said, you'll know you're done when you can't remove anything else. The hard part of this exercise is determining what is impactful enough to earn a spot on the scorecard. So if you end up with this totally bloated thing, you've failed at the kind of root sentiment or intent of the exercise. Back to banding, green, yellow, red. So this is again, and when we get to the example, and I'll share screens there and try to talk through it for the listeners, but it's just a quick signal. It's a dashboard, right? It's like, oh crap, gas is running low, yellow, we're out of gas, put, red. And so back to this kind of biometrics analogy, which is my favorite. So evergreens are vital signs like heart rate, oxygen levels. Outcomes are like cycle-based goals. So think lower your blood pressure. And then the critical 5 are daily behaviors and stressors like hydration, sleep quality, cortisol, resting heart rate variability, that kind of stuff. And here, again, the goal isn't to track everything. It's to measure what changes behavior and health in that example. So scorecards are how you notice what's off and know what to do next, and also to see where you're starting to get diminishing returns on your efforts. So we've touched on scorecard taxonomy. So again, the evergreen, outcome, critical 5. An example metric, or if we just bring this to life again, an example metric for evergreen: cash runway, logo churn. Outcome might be percentage of pipeline from tier 1, median time to value. Critical 5 might be reply rate on pain-based outbound. Or for customer success, it might be a percentage of tickets that are escalated, stuff like that. Design principles, you want to limit to 10 to 12 tiles. So figure you've got like your 5 evergreen, your 5 outcome based. So kind of 10 tiles there, and then 5 per function, depending on how mature and how many functions you have in play. So again, here, simplicity is mastery, or mastery is the act of reduction. You want to get this thing down to as few things that you need to look at. And as a function of that, you get clarity on what is the most important thing that we do to make this business better. And you should land out in a good spot. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but evergreen probably will never change in terms of governance and update rhythms. Outcome-based metrics, quarterly at most. And then the critical 5, you should expect to be generally highly dynamic. So these are a function of the weakest link, which is a moving target, and traction against current metrics. So those are the most dynamic, and those are kind of the most, if you want to organize it in your mind, like the outcomes are kind of lagging indicators. Are we moving this outcome? Whereas the critical 5 is very much leading. On a weekly basis, are we ripping the stuff that we know will generate kind of lagging results expressed as outcome-based metrics? Let's step in here and look at a real world example. Okay, so here we've got evergreen. So we've got 4 columns: category, metric, current, and then status. And ideally, you would define the bounds. So this is kind of a short-changed example, but you want to wrap clear definitions around green, yellow, and red. So evergreen, we've got cash runway, currently at 8.2, status is green. We've got logo churn percentage, current, and in our context, it would be annual, 2.1%, green. For outcome-based, we've got percentage pipeline from tier 1 accounts, 1%. We've got median time to value, that's yellow. We've got median time to value in 42 days, that's yellow. And you can start to see how those are, again, kind of lagging, right? Whereas when we get into the GTM critical 5, we've got tier 1 meetings, which is a number. We've got new tier pipeline, which is a dollar value. We've got stagnant deals. We've got pain reply rate. On the customer success side, we've got escalation rate, first touch resolution, median response time, oldest open ticket. You start to get a flavor for the distinction where that weekly is very forward-looking, very actionable, very leading. And then you get into the outcome-based, which are lagging indicators associated with the outcomes that you've selected as the most important thing possible at that point in time. And then all that stuff eventually translates into the OG evergreen stuff. Some FAQs, these are worth looking at. Like, we have more than 5 important go-to-market metrics. You failed. You want to, the kind of guiding principle is like, pick the 5 that, if green, make the others completely irrelevant. Great exercise. A metric went green for 3 weeks. Do we keep it? If it's no longer the bottleneck, archive it and elevate the next constraint. Away you go. This is back to that health example. It's like, oof, I got my cholesterol down. It's like, all right, cool. Let's start to work on your zone 4, zone 5 heart rate time and dial in your fitness routine. Finance wants fewer cash-related metrics merged into a single tile called cash health with a stacked visual. So another really, really cool thing as you go through this exercise is you'll start to understand, you'll split the atom, as we often say, where it's like, wow, we could measure these 2 or 3 things, or we can measure this, because that's really what those 2 or 3 things are about. And those are the moments where it's like, oh, yes, we're getting closer. We're getting closer to the divine. So in closing, a scorecard isn't about status. It's about signal. If your scorecard is designed right, it tells the truth faster than a board deck or anything else under the sun. Does not need to be fancy. A spreadsheet is more than enough. And use it like a diagnostic scan. Review weekly, treat the red, protect the green. I will leave it at that, y'all. Kjael signing up. Share, refer, whatever. But thanks, y'all. Pleasure to share the field of battle with you. I hope everybody's out there grinding, achieving goals, the home stretch. August and July is when most of people take off, and when the folks that apply themselves get ahead on the back half of the year. So I would encourage all of us to get tight with goals and start knocking them down. So much love. Cheers.